Hi, everybody. This is Paul Gerard with the American Dental Education Association. It's real easy to focus your efforts on how to get into dental school, but in this short module, we want to talk about one of the most important questions you'll have, and that is how to pay for your dental school education. To help you do that, we put together 10 very simple questions we think that every incoming dental school student should ask about paying for dental school. Question number one is a pretty obvious one. What is the cost of attendance, not only the first year, what's it going to cost you that first year, but folks, what's it going to cost you over the entire duration of the program? Now, the COA, the cost of attendance, which is also called the financial aid budget, you'll be able to find that in most cases online on your dental school's financial aid site. If you can't find that, simply talk to the financial aid office. The cost of attendance includes everything that the school thinks it's going to cost you for 1 year of your dental school education. It includes tuition and fees, an allowance for books and supplies, an allowance for all your living expenses, etc. And it's very important to know that cost of attendance number because that's the number that maximizes or shows you the limit of how much financial aid you can have each year from all sources combined. So question one, what's the overall cost of attendance or financial aid budget, not only for the first year, but be sure you look at what's it going to cost you over the entire duration of the program. The next question, how do you control your expenses? Well, when you look at the financial aid budget or cost of attendance we talked about in the previous slide, there's some items in the cost of attendance that you have no control over, such as tuition and fees. But take out those items like room and board, personal expenses, living expenses, transportation, miscellaneous, etc. Take those out of the budget and then divide that number by the number of months you are enrolled in school the first year. And that will be anywhere between 9 and 12 months, depending on your school. That will give you your monthly living allowance, and I would argue that you do have some control over that. So once again, take the full cost of attendance, pull out the things you have some control over, divide that by the number of months you're enrolled in school, and that will give you a good monthly living allowance to work with. If you have any questions about that, see the financial aid office. Now, once you know your cost of attendance or financial aid budget, an obvious question is, well, what kinds of financial aid are available to you to pay for your dental education? In general, there are two categories of financial aid available for dental school students: gift assistance and loan assistance. Now, we'll talk about loans in the upcoming slides. Gift assistance includes grants and scholarships. These are funds you do not have to pay back, and you should check with the financial aid office to, number one, find out if grants and scholarships are available at the school, and then if so, number two, how are they awarded and what kind of financial aid deadlines are there for those funds. The scholarships and grants, if they're available, may be based on financial need, they may be based on merit, or they may be based on a combination of merit and need. Please note that you're going to need to fill out the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, to get any kind of financial assistance from your school. Now, regardless of whether or not you get any kind of grants and scholarships to help you pay for dental school, there's a high likelihood that you're going to need to borrow to pay for your dental education. So what kind of student loans are available to dental school students? In general, there are three categories of student loans. Number one, federal direct loans. These loans come directly from the federal government. Number two, campus-based loans. These are loans directly from your school. It's not unusual for a school not to have campus-based loans, but you can check with your financial aid office about these. And then private loans. It's highly unlikely you'll need a private loan in dental school. You may have some private loans from college or perhaps a program prior to entering dental school. Clearly, the majority of the borrowing for dental school students is done with the federal loans, once again, direct unsub and direct plus, called the Grad Plus loans. You can in fact borrow up to the full amount of your cost of attendance with those two loans, direct unsub and direct plus. we'd encourage you to look on the Money Matters site where you will see a comparison chart that compares the federal loans and private loans with all their terms and conditions. So if you have to borrow, how can you be sure that you're not borrowing more than you really need? Well, two comments on this. First of all, remember what we said in an earlier slide. Pull out from your cost of attendance those items that you have some control over, living expenses, transportation, miscellaneous, etc. Find out what your monthly living allowance is and see if you can beat that. In other words, don't use the full amount of your allowance. See if you can borrow under that. Number two, another way to approach this is just because you can borrow the full cost of attendance with the direct unsub and the direct plus or grad plus loan, that doesn't mean you have to. So for example, if your total cost of attendance at your dental school is $90,000 and you know you're going to need to borrow, you might start by borrowing up to $85,000 and see if that will get you through the year. If not, you can borrow up to the full cost later. So if you're going to have to borrow, how much debt can you expect to have when you graduate? The average debt for indebted borrowers in the class of 2021 was just over $300,000. It tends to be a little lower for those of you who attend state schools. It'll tend to be a little bit higher for those of you attending private schools. Remember, though, that this is the amount you borrow because the loans you are taking out, direct unsub and direct plus if you borrow federal loans, remember that they accrue interest from the time of disbursement. So while you may be borrowing an average of just over $300,000, your actual amount that you owe at repayment could be significantly higher. So what about funds for international students? If you're an international student and not eligible for federal student aid, remember you have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident to qualify for federal student aid. So if you're an international student, please be sure you check with your financial aid office at your dental school to see if perhaps they have any funds designated for international students, including DACA students. There is a chance that if you have to borrow as an international student, you may be able to get a private loan, but in all likelihood, you're going to need a creditworthy cosigner who is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. But your number one call should be to the financial aid office. So how in the world do dental school graduates handle their debt? Well, first of all, note that dental school graduates have a terrific reputation for timely and responsible repayment. In fact, the recent dental school senior survey from the American Dental Education Association indicates that the number one answer for upcoming dental school graduates in terms of how they plan to handle and repay their debt was to be aggressive in repayment. Now, regardless of how much you end up borrowing, there are a number of different repayment options available to you, and you can see a sample of this on the Money Matters website. There are repayment plans based on how much you borrowed spread out over a designated period of time, 10 years or 25 years, but there are also repayment plans based on your income and not on the amount that you borrowed. There are also plans like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, where if you work in the public sector for 10 years using an income plan after you graduate, you can have your debt forgiven with Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Once again, all this information is available on the Money Matters site. So lots of different ways for dental school graduates to responsibly repay their student loan debt. Now, are there some things that you need to know if you are going to be borrowing student loans, especially if you've never borrowed student loans before? The obvious answer to that is yes. Please know that when you borrow, regardless of whether it's a federal loan, campus-based, or a private loan, you are required to receive from your lender what's called a disclosure statement. And on that disclosure statement, there will be a lot of information about the terms and the conditions of your loan. That will include the lender, the loan servicer, that's the organization that works with you in repayment, the interest rate and whether it's fixed or variable, and your repayment options for the loan when you graduate, including any kind of grace periods you may have before you actually enter repayment. If you check on the Money Matters site, there's some information on terms that you'll be able to access. So once again, please be sure you watch for your disclosure statement when you take out student loans. The last question, where in the world can you go for help? Well, we'd suggest first and foremost the financial aid office of your dental school, and we've referenced this several times before. Now, please note that depending on the school you go to, there may be a standalone independent financial aid office within the dental school to help you. But at other schools, you may find that the financial aid is handled in a main campus financial aid office. Regardless, please be sure you find out who your contact is so that if you have any specific questions about financial aid for dental school students, that they can help you. We'd also encourage you to pay attention again to Money Matters, to the ADIA site. We have a section on financial resources for students that will be helpful. We would just strongly encourage you to be careful about receiving information on financial aid from social media. Once again, your number one contact is the financial aid office at your dental school. We hope the information in this module has been helpful to you as you ask the very important question, how am I going to finance my dental school education? On behalf of the American Dental Education Association, good luck to you, and please remember that responsible borrowing leads to responsible repayment.